Welcome, and Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. And let me go to the screen share. There we are. Close this. And we are, of course, on a new parsha. This is the third of the 4 parshiot that finish up the book of Genesis. So next week we'll be finishing already the book of Genesis. These sort of markings I find to be bittersweet. In this particular parsha, what has happened is, at this point, Judah, by showing true nobility, and just to remind you that what happens essentially is Joseph set things up so that the brothers can easily leave Benjamin as a slave to him. And because Judah had promised their father that he would take personal responsibility, he steps forward to Joseph. He explains the situation and how it'll just kill his father. Of course, he doesn't know it's Joseph. And he says, look, he said, I made myself personally responsible. Take me as your slave and let Benjamin go free. And when Judah does that, because that is such an incredible act of true nobility, the Bible couldn't define it better. True nobility. Joseph can no longer control his emotions, and he has to reveal himself to his brothers because he knows to what degree they feel bad. And Judah, who was the one who initially had him sold, told the other brothers to sell him into slavery, obviously has done a 180-degree turnaround. And to care about their father so much, and to care about his brother, even though Benjamin is probably now the favorite, probably simply switched places with how Joseph was with his father, and nevertheless just puts other people ahead of himself in such a profound kind of way.
Rabbi,
Yeah,
I got a question.
sure.
Okay. Joseph and Jacob. Okay.
Mhm.
Jacob never told, it's 20 years of working for Laban. He never called his father, Isaac, up on those 20 years. I don't understand it. The same with Joseph. Why didn't he call his father up and say, look, I'm in prison, or I'm here, or I'm there. I'm still alive. I'm here, Dad.
Okay.
You're supposed to call your dad if you're gone so long. What's
I will give you the answer that my father would give, which is it's a story.
What's
And
that?
it's a story. It's a story. And
Oh, okay.
that is not the point the story wants to make. The point the story wants to make is more about how people can change, how reconciliation, how tshuva, how repentance can actually take place. I could give you reasons why. First of all, just because the story doesn't say anything about Jacob contacting Isaac doesn't mean he didn't. It's just not part of the story, and it would have changed the story. The other piece to remember is that Jacob ran away from his house, and he was in fear that Esau would kill him. So it's possible that he didn't want to stir up anything that might be perceived by Esau as a reason to go get him. So, I mean, I can think of other reasons by that, but we can't argue necessarily from silence. As far as Joseph is concerned, I think there's an allusion to that. I mean, it's a good question, Harlan, and in the sense that he says he names his first son Menashe, right? And the word Menashe, and it says the reason he named his son Menashe is because God helped him forget about all the pain that he'd experienced back in the land of his birth. So it could be that Joseph did not want to go back there because the emotions that he had that were associated with this terrible, terrible experience that he'd had with his brothers wanting to kill him and then selling him into slavery was something he was trying to just put out of his mind. So, I think we can possibly understand it that way.
I have one more comment on that, is that, if we're looking at it more literally, in certain circumstances, there is no way to get in touch with someone else, such as being miles away, not having a phone. We can't call them up. So, when those obstacles are in the way also, just depends upon your circumstances.
Absolutely. So that could be, yeah. I mean, I'm
But
not
he was viceroy. He could have sent somebody over to his dad. He
even
had plenty of time to send people over.
Harlan, when you experience something so devastating as that as a child, it's very hard. Basically, you spend a lot of the rest of your life trying to speaking to a counselor and trying to deal with the emotional damage it causes. So I don't know what psychologists they had back then. I'm sure they had counselors, but I think at this point, it's possible that Joseph wouldn't have wanted his brothers to find any way to kill him. I mean, I think he had reason to feel concern regarding his brothers. If you had a brother that actually wanted to kill you or sell you and actually did sell you into slavery, ask yourself, how would you feel? Right. So
Mm.
I think I think there's good reason to say that he would not want to get back in touch with his dad. So, okay, let's keep going here. So things have resolved now, and in fact, the family has now come down to Egypt, and Jacob has come as well. In fact, we also read about how he came into the presence of Pharaoh and greeted Pharaoh, etc., etc. So going on, Vayoshev Yosef et Aviv et Echav. Joseph settled his father and his brothers. Vayiten lahem achuzah be'eretz Mitzrayim, and he gave them a holding in the land of Egypt. In other words, they now held real estate in the land of Egypt. They made tav haaretz in the best part of the land. It was choice property. The Eretz Ramses in the land of Ramses, or the area of Ramses, Kasher Tziva Paro, as Pharaoh had commanded. So Pharaoh truly, truly understood what appreciation was about, and told Joseph that he needed to settle his family there. Interesting little insight there. Rashi has a short comment, Ramses, and the reason why I think he needs to comment on this is because we talk about Joseph had talked to his brothers about settling in the land of Goshen, and here we're reading about Ramses, and so an area called Ramses, and so Rashi explains Me Eretz Goshen He. It's from the land, it's in the area of Goshen. So Ramses was a specific neighborhood, you might say, in the land of Goshen or in the area of Goshen. There's no contradiction involved here. Onwards. Vayichalkel Yosef et Aviv ve'et Echav. And Joseph provided for his father and his brothers, ve'et kol Beit Aviv, and his father's entire household. Lechem, bread, and I think we can understand bread to mean food, right? Lefi hataf, according to the children. That's what it means literally. And of course, in some ways, this expression is a bit puzzling. So Rashi explains, Lefi hataf, according to the children, or according to the child. Although I think taf can be a plural as well. Lefi hatzarich l'chol b'nei veitam. He says, according to what was required to all the people in their households. So in other words, he made sure that every single one of them had adequate food, etc. Velechem ein b'chol eretz, haaretz, excuse me. And there was no bread. Now they mentioned lechem here, and the subject now shifts. It says, there was no bread in all the land. Ki chaved hara'av ma'od, for the famine, ra'av famine, was very heavy. Va'tela eretz Mitzrayim, and the land of Egypt languished. The Eretz Canaan and the land of Canaan, mipnei hara'av, on account of the famine. They were doing so, it affected everyone so deeply. So what they're saying, of course, is that they couldn't grow anything. Nothing was growing there, right? Choser, so Rashi tells us, Choser le'inyan harishon. He says the story is now returning to its original theme, and that is way back in Genesis 43, and here we are in Genesis 47, and where we talked about the whole episode of Joseph and his brothers and how all that got resolved. But now we're going back to the fact that we're dealing with this time of famine, these 7 years of famine that followed the 7 years of plenty. So, l'tchilat shnei hara'av. In other words, the narrative is going back to the beginning of the years of famine. Vatela, right? Vatela. That's the word right over here, languished. And he says this is it actually involves an elision of a letter. And he'll tell you, Rashi's going to tell you, come on, this is similar to had it been written, vatil So there's an aleph that is left out of this particular word, and that is part of the root of the word, lashon ayefut. It has the connotation of weariness, of becoming weary, ketargumo, as is in the Aramaic. And let's see, we can look and see if we can find here we go. So it's back in here. The ishtalhe ama tahara. So this must have to do, this particular root in Aramaic has, and this is the Amam would be the people, the Ara of the land of the Mitzrayim of Egypt. So this ishtalhe must have to do with a word that has a meaning of weariness. So he says, right? V'domelo, and this is similar to another verse in Proverbs chapter 26, verse 18. Mitlala, or mitlala hayore zikim, like one who casts firebrands becomes weary, right? One who casts firebrands becomes weary. So exactly what that proverb means? Possibly that if it depends on how you want to understand that term, casting firebrands. Does it have to do with bad mouthing, etc.? That even that ultimately affects the person who's creating this problem, and they get tired. They get tired out on various kinds of ways, emotionally, etc., etc. Back into the text here. Vaylaket Yosef et kol hakesef, and Joseph collected all the money hanimsa be'eretz Mitzrayim that was found in the land of Egypt, uve eretz Canaan, and in the land of Canaan, bashever, for the rations, asher hem shovrim, which they were procuring. So in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan, they used up their money to purchase these rations. Vayaveh Yosef et hakesef beita paro, and Joseph brought this money into the house of Pharaoh. Didn't keep it for himself. Bashever asher hem shovrim, through the produce that they were purchasing, notnin lo et hakesef, they would give him the money and he would give them food. So we can see a situation starting to develop. Vayitom hakesef me'eretz Mitzrayim. And the money came to an end from the land of Egypt. They didn't have any more money to spend. Ume Eretz Canaan, and from the land of Canaan. It is interesting how they connect the land of Canaan and the land of Egypt together in this narrative. And in a sense, I don't know if there's a sort of a foreshadowing of the fact that the Israelites are always going to go back to that land of Canaan. That's where they're going to ultimately settle. Vayavo'u kol Mitzrayim el Yosef, and all the Egyptians came to Joseph, Lamor, saying, Hava lanu lechem, give us bread. V'lama namut negdecha, for why should we die before you? Ya'afes kesef, because the money is at an end. So clearly a critical moment. Rashi just has a brief comment here. A face, right? Targumor shalim. So shalim from shalom, right? So here it has to do with is paid up, l'shalem, something. It's all related, by the way, because when you pay for something, you're not stealing. You're doing it in a way that creates and promotes peace. But here it is. It has to do with coming to a conclusion, right? Because again, paying for something concludes the transaction, essentially. So at any rate, a face here, he's saying, in other words, it's come to an end. It's come to a conclusion. Vayomer Yosef, and so Joseph said to them, Havu miknechem, bring your cattle. Ve'etna lachem miknechem, and I will give you food for your cattle. Im afes kesef, if you no longer have money, you don't have money anymore. What's interesting is that the word mikneh, which has to do with cattle, livestock, the word kana, this root kana, which means to acquire, is in this particular word. It's buried in the word. And I suppose you might say that before there was coinage, cattle, and there was basically barter, that cattle were a way of exchanging goods, etc., etc. Also, I think it's a fact that a person's wealth would be measured by the amount of cattle that they had, or how much livestock they had. It's interesting that there is this root involved there. Let's see if, right, let me see. All right, so we have no Rashi on that. Vayaviu et miknehem el Yosef. So they brought their livestock to Joseph. Vayiten lahem Yosef lechem, and Joseph gave them food. Vasusim, for the horses, uva mikneh hatzon, and for the sheep, the livestock, the sheep, uva mikneh habakar, and the cattle, uva chamorim, and for donkeys. Vayinahalem alechem v'kol miknehem, and he literally, it means he guided them, but we're going to understand the context here to mean he provided for them with food for all their livestock in that year. And I think this all happened in year number 1. This all came to an end. Rashi takes a look at this word v'yinahalehem. It is certainly somewhat of a strange word in this position, because lenahel does mean to lead or to direct, something like that. And he's saying this is as if it says vayin hagem, right? Again, linhog means to, again, in modern Hebrew, linhog, it means to drive a car. That's and a nahag is a driver. But again, it means, I suppose, that he had control over them that year, has that kind of connotation associated with them, because he clearly was putting Pharaoh into control over the Egyptians. Vedomelo, and this is similar, the other similar situations where we can find in Isaiah, it says, Ein menahel la, she has none to guide her, perhaps referring to the Israelites at that time, that they were, as it were, leaderless. They weren't willing to accept any good guidance. And in Psalm 23, this is from Isaiah, Psalm 23, familiar with that? The Lord is my shepherd. It says, Al mei menuchot yenahaleni. There's that word, yenahaleni. On calm waters, he leads me, right? He leads me beside the still waters. That's this in Hebrew. Vatitum hashana ha'i, and that year ended. Vayavo elav bashana hashenit, and they came to him in the second year. Vayomru lo, and they said to him, Lo nichached me'adoni. So I believe it's saying here, they told him, we will not hold back. We won't lie to you, I think is what it's saying here. Ki im tam hakesef, okay, for the money has come to an end. Umiknei habehema el adoni, and the cattle, the livestock, the cattle has come to our Lord. Literally, it means my Lord, but it's speaking about them as a collective. Lo nishar lifnei adoni, there is nothing left before my Lord. Bilti im gviatenu va'admatenu. All that we have left is our bodies, gvia, your body, va'admatenu, and our land. We have nothing left but our bodies and our land. Let's go here. So it says, Bashana Hashenit, in the second year, Shenit Lishnei Harav. And Rashi clarifies that this is understood as meaning the second of the years of famine. Ki im tam hakesef. So it says, Ki asher tam hakesef. So he's saying that this im can mean if, but here it means that. For the money has come to an end. In that the money has ended. Umikneh, and the cattle, the livestock. Uva hakol el yad adoni, and everything has come into the possession of my Lord. Bilti im viatenu, except for our bodies. And it's as if it says im log viatenu, if not for our bodies. Now this editorial comment is a puzzle to me. I understand a little bit of it, but I don't know. I'm not sure what this abbreviation stands for. I tried to do a little research on it. I have an idea, perhaps. Anyway, this is what it's saying. Hachi gires ram. So this, I think it's Abraham Mizrahi is the name of the Re'em. And it says, this is the version of the Re'em, V'chein betfus yashan, and likewise in an ancient printed work, right? Tfus is a printed work as opposed to a manuscript. The Iyen, and here we go. So I don't know. He says, check it out, Iyen, and this could be, and I don't know what this Gimel Aleph means, unless it means Girsa Acheret, could mean a different text. Meyashev Girsa Shniya. Okay, so this could be Girsa Rishona. Here's the Gimel, right? This could mean, and look at the first version of this text, which Meyashev means it makes sense of the second version of this. So exactly what he's referring to, I don't know. This is something that's left for me as a bit of a puzzle as to what this would appear to be an editorial comment within the Rashi.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I have the word save.
Save. Yes.
Save.
Yes.
As
Save.
opposed, yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Right. Save in the
My
sense
translation.
of only.
Yeah.
Only.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yes. Exactly. All we have left is this. Nothing but.
Yeah.
So here we go. Let's go to one more verse here. Lama namut. Why should we die? I mean, things have gotten to a point of desperation. La'einecha, before you. Gam anachnu, gam admatenu. Right? Gam, the gam means we, anachnu, we, and our land. K'nei otanu. Okay, so I think there's a comma here. K'nei otanu. Acquire us, ve'atmatenu, and our land, balechem, for bread, for food. V'nihiyeh anachnu ve'admatenu, and we and our land, avadim leFaro, will be slaves, servants to Pharaoh. V'tein zera, and give seed, v'nichyeh v'lo namut, so that we can live and not die. V'ha'adamah lo tesham, and so that the land does not become desolate. Let's take a look at Rashi on this. Okay. V'tein zera, give seed. So this is interesting, right? To give seed at this point because the land doesn't seem to be producing very much. But anyway, let's see. Lizro ha'adama, in order to plant the land, to put seed into the land. V'afal pi she'amar Yosef, and despite the fact that Joseph says, V'od chamesh shanim, there is still another 5 years, asher ein charish v'katzir, where there will be no plowing or harvesting. Mikevan sheba Yaakov leMitzrayim. This is such an interesting comment here. Because Jacob came leMitzrayim, to Egypt, ba'a bracha leraglo. The truth is that as a blessing came, literally it means at his feet, in his train, I guess we could say, if we wanted to use some fancy English, right? The influence of his being such a blessing, he brought blessing with him, v'hitchilu lizroa, and they were able to start planting, v'kala or kila hara'av, and so that the famine came to an end, v'chein shaninu betosefta dosota, and in fact there is a rabbinic text in the Tosefta. The Tosefta is a collection of Mishnaic, I'd say sources that go back to Mishnaic times, that is prior to the year 200, which were not included in the Mishnah itself. And Sota is the name of one of the tractates. So there is some very early, relatively early texts that would support this. So this is something we never would have realized, except a very, very close reading of the Hebrew here, and that the famine actually only lasted 2 years. Lo tesham, it should not become desolate. Lo tehesh mama, simply using this word tesham is an abbreviated form of a word that means shmama, that's a more common word, which means desolate. Lo tavor lashon sadeh, bor she'eno charush. I'd have to look at this again to see what is he saying. Tavor, I'm not sure where this is coming from. He's saying lashon sadeh has the connotation of a field. Bor she'eno charush. Literally, a bor is a well, something like that. Charush from charisha would be to plow. So I'm not sure where this, what this comment is actually trying to add here. So I'm going to actually put the marking in here. And I'll see if there's some way I can do any research on this and give an explanation the next time we meet. Okay. So I'm going to stop the share here and stop the recording.